It's time for Let's do this. Good evening, Hampton Roads. Good evening, Northeast North Carolina. My name is David Aldrich, Chief Meteorologist at WTKR Newsfeed Television, and you are watching a special edition of First 41, where you, the viewer, have the ability to ask a question of the director of National Hurricane Center. And you are watching First 41, sponsored by Northeast Pizza. Coming up a little bit, just a programming note. I'm going to have my personal 7-day forecast at the end of the live stream and your information on how you can win some free pizza from Marcos. That's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. It's very generous of them. But first things first, I gotta get to the fact we have a flash in morning that's been extended by 2 hours. In different airport news, James City, New York, it was to go away at 7. When I was on at 6 o'clock tonight, we thought it would expire at 7, but no, it's now going to 9. So we can talk about heavy rain from Aaron. But we've already had 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, potentially more, right on I-64 rather. That's really important that you turn around and don't drown. This is all falling in the same area. We'll get to that. We're going to switch gears. I want to bring in this gentleman. Now, this is a picture in his work setting, but here he is within the meeting. I'm Mike Brennan, Dr. Mike Brennan. What a pleasure it is to see you. What's it been, a quarter of a century?
Yeah, it's been a while. Great to see you, David.
Great to see you, sir. What is it that we need to know that you can update us on Hurricane Aaron? What do we need to know right now?
Well, despite the fact that the center of Aaron is gonna pass, well offshore of the North Carolina Outer Banks as we go through the day, especially on Thursday. Aaron's going to be a very large storm. It's already a big hurricane. Right now, the tropical storm force winds go out more than 200 miles away from the center. It's going to continue to grow in size, as hurricanes typically do as they move out of the tropics and up into the mid-latitudes. And those winds are going to expand. And even though the center is going to be well offshore, we're going to see the biggest impact is going to be the waves and the storm surge potential, especially along the North Carolina Outer Banks. We're going to have a huge wave field that Aaron's wind field is generating, and that's all that energy is going to crash into the Outer Banks and produce significant coastal flooding. Where we have a storm surge watch that's been issued basically from Cape Lookout up to Duck, and that is going to that's basically going to account for the possibility of 2 to 4 feet of inundation above ground level. And I'll try to bring up the graphic here and show you what that looks like. This is a situation that, life-threatening inundation typically begins around 3 feet of inundation above ground level. I'm 6 feet tall, 3 feet up to, above my waist. But that area you see in yellow there from Cape Lookout up to Duck is where we have that potential for that life-threatening inundation. A lot of it's going to be coming from the ocean side, from those very large waves that are going to crash and reach some of the dunes. You're probably going to see North Carolina Highway 12 overwashed and cut off, and that's why they've had evacuations ordered at Ocracoke Island, Hatteras Island, to get people out of those areas. It's generally just going to be a dangerous couple of days. Starting tomorrow afternoon, continuing a peak waves and surge will likely be overnight Wednesday night into Thursday morning as the center of Aaron, kind of races by as it goes off to the northeast. So as usual, water is the big story, especially there in the Outer Banks. You can even see some inundation 1 to 3 feet above ground level up north of Duck into Currituck County and up into the Hampton Roads area of the James River, near the eastern shore as well. So there's going to be a lot of water moving around. The highest chance for getting tropical storm force winds is really going to be right there along the Outer Banks, where we have that tropical storm watch in effect from Beaufort Inlet up to Duck. Could see sustained tropical storm force winds, especially out in places like Hatteras, exposed areas, but definitely the potential for a lot of tropical storm force wind gusts as Aaron goes by and that big wind field moves along the coast there.
We got a first question from a viewer.
Sure.
Dr. Michael, and from Kimberly. It's a pretty straightforward question. She wants to know when it reaches farther in.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of inland impacts with this system. It's going to be confined mostly to just the very coastal areas because you are going to be seeing more of the periphery of the storm. So once you get, say you're in eastern North Carolina, you get on the other side of Pamlico or Albemarle Sound, you're not going to see a lot in the way of substantial impacts in terms of water. The winds are really going to be right along the coast. even the rainfall could, just kind of be more right along the coast itself. The rain impacts are going to mostly be at the coast and then more offshore. So for inland folks, this is thankfully not going to be a big event for the most part into southeastern Virginia or northeastern North Carolina.
As we mentioned just moments before we started this live stream, overgrowth. I know it's a mandatory ventilation we have this. These places are pretty well battled through them. They've been through storms before. I noticed when I got here about 6 months ago, the hurricanes, if you remember those, going back to 1950, we had Hazel, we had Floyd in 1999, we had Isabel 2003, and a lot of people get chills from Isabel. And then we also had Irene in 2011. We had Matthew, became Matthew. So sometimes these names can trigger. Could you speak to the fact that what's the biggest misconception about the cone?
Well, the cone doesn't tell you what the impacts are going to be. So if you look at the cone for Aaron right now, the cone only tells you the likely track of the center of the storm, and it's based on how good our forecasts have been over the last 5 years. As our track forecasts get better, the cone continues to get smaller and smaller, but the storms themselves don't. And especially a storm like Aaron, which is unusually large, you're going to have the impacts extending well outside the cone. The wind, the storm surge, potentially the heavy rainfall. You go back to a storm like Helene last year, which was a tremendously large hurricane that made landfall, on the west coast of Florida, that brought catastrophic impacts well away from the center all the way up into the southern Appalachians. So the cone itself is just a high-level view of where the center of the storm can go or is likely to go. It's not telling you, what you need to prepare for.
Likelihood is 20% chance.
It's about 67% in, a third out. So 2/3 of the time, statistically, the center should stay inside the cone. About a third of the time, it will get outside of the cone based on our track errors that we made over the last 5 years.
She said, "Hey, get that. You take care of yourself." How is it to talk to your neighbors? I know it's starting. Some people don't even. Back in the day, you say, "Ask your neighbor for a couple billion, cup of sugar." They don't even. We're so attached to the phones now. Is that how important of a job and get people to get to know each other?
It's really important. We get through these kinds of events and survive these kind of events as a community. And you look at just general preparedness. We have people moving into hurricane-prone areas all the time from places where they've never experienced a hurricane. That's true everywhere. It's true where I am in South Florida. It's true along the North Carolina coast, southeastern Virginia. Take advantage of the community, the neighborhood you have, the experiences that those people have lived in their communities, and that will help you to understand what your risks are, because surviving a storm is all about knowing what your risk is. Are you at risk from storm surge flooding? Are you at risk from freshwater flooding from a river or a creek? What kind of events have affected your area in the past? How does your community respond? Do you live in an evacuation zone? Where do you go? How do you get there? Do you need somebody to help you get to a safe place? And all that you can learn a lot by your community, and you can also help take care of your neighbors, your friends, your loved ones that might have concerns, might have an inability to get to a safe place, mobility issues boarding up their home. So it's really a community event. And you're right, the community, foundation may not be as strong as it was, but you do see communities really come together during and after disasters. And that's still a pretty common theme we see after a lot of these events.
Thank you for that, Dr. Dr. Michael Brennan, the director of the National Hurricane Center, a national figure in 15 time. This was an arrangement. He was going to come on this platform before we had Aaron. But now that we have Aaron, always been really sorry, doesn't Aaron, what do we see in Virginia Beach? What do you think, Dr. Mike?
Yeah, there's going to be high surf, all along almost the entire East Coast, from around Palm Beach, Florida, which is just north of the Bahamas, that block a lot of the surf. But you get north of there, you're going to go all the way up through the Chesapeake Bay region into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. It's going to be dangerous surf and rip current conditions. You're going to start to see, 3 to 5 foot breakers, long period swell developing in Virginia Beach. That's going on now, and that's only going to get worse with time as that wave field associated with Aaron continues to move out ahead of the storm. So by tomorrow, you're really going to see dangerous ocean conditions at the beach all the way up into North Carolina and Virginia. And that's only going to spread northward as we go through the rest of the week. So It's really important to remember that rip currents are one of the sort of underrated or underappreciated hazards in hurricanes, especially for a storm that's passing far enough offshore. Weather might be relatively calm where you are. There you go. Coastal Carolina's weather fatalities. Rip currents kill more people than just about anything. So, right.
Just about the time, it's about the time I graduated from NC State. Now, I didn't want to make you feel home, so I wanted to know you got your undergrad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you got your master's at NC State, and then you got your PhD. And if I'm not mistaken, it was choleomatic, tsunami, meteorology.
Yeah.
But you graduated the same year as Katrina, and we're coming up on the anniversary of that week for Friday, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Katrina was August 2005. I think it was the 28th. So it's within the next 10 days or so. Yeah, it's a kind of a somber remembrance for those of us who were in the field or associated with the field, going back that far, and such a devastating storm. And I think a lot of the improvements and product enhancements that we've seen, especially when it comes to improving forecasts of rapid intensification, improving forecasts and warnings related to storm surge, can be directly drawn back to steps that were taken in the aftermath of storms like Katrina to really advance the science forward. And it's we've come a long way in 20 years. If you think about where we were in forecasting storm surge at the time of Katrina, we had no high resolution graphics, no inundation mapping, no specific warning for storm surge. We have all of that now, and we've been able to reduce the number of fatalities from storm surge down to levels that are much lower than they were going back into the mid to late 20th century up to the time of Katrina.
Probably watching. I got to broadcast meteorologist, other friends of mine watching, and we have just people who live on the Outer Banks.
Sure.
Looking for some general information, which I really appreciate you putting on the show. Can I ask you, what's the worst case scenario? When you go to the break room, assuming you have a break room at the National Hurricane Center, where you guys are just kind of spitballing a worst case scenario, it's going to be the world's again, what's the worst case scenario where you can say, "Whoa, I don't want to be around with that."
Well, I think it's more of the scenario of the storm than where. There are lots of areas that are very vulnerable to hurricane impacts, but you think about a rapidly intensifying hurricane that has explosive intensification in the last day or so prior to landfall, and that can really change the level of the impacts. And you think about a storm like that could affect a major metropolitan area like Tampa, like here in Southeast Florida, New Orleans, Houston, Charleston, the Hampton Roads area. You think back to the storm we had in the Eastern Pacific, Otis, a couple of years ago, that rapidly intensified, what basically went from a tropical storm to Category 5 hurricane within a day or two, and then hit the Acapulco area, and it wasn't well forecast. We'd like to think that we're better than that in terms of forecasting most of the time, especially in the Atlantic, where we have a lot more reconnaissance data, and the forecast models do a little better. But that's kind of the worst case scenario for coastal impacts. I think from inland impacts, I think we lived it last year with Helene. I mean, I think Helene in many ways was the worst case scenario you could see for a hurricane with inland impacts, probably only on par with a storm like Hugo in 1989.
I know we haven't talked much in all since our graduation in 1999. I spent 2 years in Knoxville. So
Yeah.
I was there with September when we got 5 or 6 inches of Knoxville, Charlotte, in Newport, Cobb County, the Great Smoky Mountains, but just over the same line because we lost part of I-40
Right.
in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Anderson, 22 inches. We have almost 30
30.
inches.
Yep.
Chill. So those things are dramatic, and you had all of that omega, all that big lift, photographic lift, it kind of squeeze everything out. It's fighting. It's fighting.
Yeah, and that kind of, and that speaks to the point that, freshwater flooding from rainfall has been by far the biggest killer in tropical storms and hurricanes in the last, 10 to 15 years in the United States, responsible for about half of the fatalities. Much more now than storm surge, much more than wind, much more than any other hazard. So, and that's an equal opportunity hazard. It can happen anywhere. Anywhere it can rain, or where it can rain upstream of you, it can flood. And so you don't have to be at the coast. It doesn't have to be from a major hurricane. It's just you get that moisture up in there, and it can can rain really hard and really fast. Yeah, if you look at the timing information, the most likely time that you would see those tropical storm force winds along the Outer Banks would be sometime Wednesday evening into early Thursday morning hours. That's when they would likely start. And then they probably decrease Thursday as the storm starts to pull away from the area.
Last week, I gotta ask you this. Last week, we talked about the new state of the climate. Talked about the time events. We had a lot of July. It felt like 100 states 2 times in July. And of course, the FSPs, the sea surface temperatures were 170 degrees. How concerned are you? The 2-part question. How concerned are you, and what steps the National Hurricane Center making to adjust for this new reality?
Well, we have a lot better modeling than we used to, and that's really helped us improve our forecast of intensification. And we've seen a lot of rapidly intensifying hurricanes in the last few years. Aaron, I was just looking at some of the statistics based on the preliminary data. It's in the top 4 or 5 on record in the Atlantic for how quickly it strengthened back on August 16th. We've gotten a lot bolder in making more aggressive intensity forecasts. We've learned a lot about how rapid intensification works. You actually try and forecast it now. 20 years ago, or back when we were in college in the 90s, there was no ability to try to predict the rapid intensification of a hurricane. It just simply was beyond the science at that point. And we're not perfect. We don't get the timing right. We don't get the exact peak right, but we are more aggressive in trying to get that forecast correct. I think the other thing is we're focusing on the water hazards. We know that as the ocean warms, sea level is rising. People in Hampton Roads are living that every day, regardless of whether or not there's a storm. But that base water level being higher makes communities more vulnerable to storm surge. And we're also seeing increased rainfall rates, like we just talked about with Helene, where you have higher rainfall rates than previously because warmer air holds more moisture. And that's leading to more extreme precipitation events, more significant flash flooding. So it's just, again, about understanding the risk and understanding how that risk of heavy precipitation and storm surge is going to change as we move ahead in time.
I don't know if that's something you want to comment, but the beach replenishment issue, where you're dredging offshore, seeing the hotels and the sand on the beach, and sometimes they can disrupt the real guys' housing. Is that just an uphill battle? What perspective do you take on beach nourishment or beach replenishment?
Yeah, it's not something we're directly involved in, really. I mean, obviously, beach erosion and the preservation of beach structures like dunes and those types of features along the immediate beach line are really important in trying to contain storm surge and lessen the impact of significant storm surge and coastal flooding and breaking waves events. So it is really important to try to maintain some of that dune structure. We see that in events where you can have a hurricane that weakens or destroys the dunes, and then you have another storm come along maybe even a year later. And without those dunes or with weaker dunes, the water is able to penetrate much further inland and can cause more damage and affect more property. So those coastal barriers are important, but again, there's a lot of local decisions and local issues that go into how and where to either restore or replace them.
I think I might be. Could you hear me now better? I think yeah. I had some audio settings that I'm juggling, so it's just me behind the desk here. But I appreciate your patience, Jeff. One of the things I got to ask you is because here I lived in Knoxville, so kind of landlocked for a while, and then Helene hits. I come here and I see a lot of these lighthouses. The one in Matthews County that was commissioned by Thomas Jefferson in 1804 was the New Point Comfort Lighthouse. It was the third oldest in the Chesapeake Bay, 10th oldest lighthouse in the United States. It used to be you could walk up to it. Not anymore. You got to take, thanks in part to the hurricane of 1933, you can't walk up to it. It's like a distance. And there's a nice observation walkway from NOAA that you have all set up there where it really kind of draws your attention to sea level rise. It's a real thing here where people have that issue on the eastern shore, barrier islands, and all the rest. Quick question on the on Cat 5, Erin. Erin became a Category 5, I believe it was 11:20 on Saturday. She dropped 78 millibars in 24 hours from 5 p.m. Friday to 5 p.m. Saturday. Last Cat 5 in August, I believe, was Dean, 2007. but Wilma being the record, I believe, is 97. Drop of 97 to 2005. Is this something, a trend you're seeing, more of these going from 0 or category 1 to 5 in 3 days or less? Is this a trend that you're seeing?
Well, we've seen a lot of it in the last few years, and a lot of it, Aaron didn't happen right before it made landfall, but a lot of the storms we've seen in the Gulf recently, like Helene last year, rapidly intensified up to landfall. Ian, you go back to 2020, storms like Nora. The strongest hurricanes that have ever hit the United States, the high-end category 4s, category 5s, to get that strong, a hurricane has to go through some kind of rapid intensification period. And usually that tends to happen when a storm is relatively early on in its life cycle. So those tend to be storms that form near land in the Gulf and the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and then rapidly strengthen and make landfall within just a few days. We have seen signs that as we have warmer ocean temperatures, that rapid intensification is a little more rapid and a little more frequent at times. Again, like you said, the statistics, I was actually, just before we got on here, I was looking back at some of the statistics for Aaron, and like you said, it's tied for third in the Atlantic for deepening rate over a 24-hour period, only behind Wilma. Wilma had 2 of them, 97 millibars in 24 hours, 90 millibars in 24 hours. Aaron was about 83 millibars in 24 hours, at least based on our preliminary stats. So it was a remarkable event Saturday to see a storm strengthen that quickly. But I do want to say that, we were able to tell that because we had the Hurricane Hunter aircraft in the storm while it was going on. And the data they provide is so valuable, especially in those situations where a storm is changing really quickly. You can see it on satellite imagery, but there's a lot more uncertainty by interpreting how strong a storm is from satellite imagery than to actually getting the aircraft measurements.
Can you describe some of the picture I'm going to put on the screen here? Can you describe some of the things that you have as far as tools? You now have drop signs, you have gliders, you got floats, you got all these goodies. I mean, is this helping you give a better forecast, essentially?
Absolutely, yeah. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft, that's a P3. One of those Hurricane Hunter planes you're seeing on the slide there. One of the big tools it has is that radar on the back. It's called a tail Doppler radar, and it's basically like taking the radar you show on television every night and being able to fly it into the hurricane, so we can get radar measurements of the structure and the wind field around the storm, and then the drop sondes that are deployed out of the aircraft that measure temperature and pressure and wind and moisture all the way down to the ocean surface, plus the data collected by the aircraft as it flies around. All that data makes the model forecast of track and intensity 10 to 20% better when we have the aircraft in the storm than when we don't. And as I mentioned, having an aircraft in the storm when a storm is rapidly intensifying is really valuable. And some of the other images you see on there are uncrewed systems like gliders, UASs, which are these small uncrewed, almost like drones that can be dropped out of the P3 and fly around at the ocean surface. So we're learning how to better use those tools and gather science information to understand how hurricanes work, but also get some of that data into us here at the Hurricane Center at the time.
Do you want to talk about this picture? This picture is what the HAFS. Did this help you with Aaron, perhaps, or some of the technology associated with it?
Yeah, HAFS is one of NOAA's what we call regional hurricane models. So it's a specific model that was designed to forecast hurricanes, track, intensity, structure. And the nice thing about a model like HAFS is it can take all that aircraft data that we look at here at the Hurricane Center, and it can use it to help analyze the structure of the storm more accurately. And that can lead to improvements and changes, improvements in forecasting changes in intensity, like this type of rapid intensification. So we have a lot more tools in our toolbox for forecasting those types of changes than we did when I got to the Hurricane Center as a forecaster, say in 2008. We were just sort of at the beginning of that era of this kind of modeling. So we have a lot more skilled models now than we used to, and a lot more data from the aircraft are getting into them.
We're coming up on 8:05, and I know your time is limited. I want to go, could I do a lightning round of questions with you?
Sure.
Maybe stick to maybe a sentence or maybe 2 words would be great, but I'll get fast questions. And then if there are any other questions, if you're just joining us, we have Dr. Michael Brennan, what a treat, Director of the National Hurricane Center. He has spent some time, obviously, in the hurricane zone for a good 20, 30 years almost now, and a long time of his expertise. If you have a question that you would like to ask him, just type a comment, and I'll do my best to get it on the screen. All right, here's the lightning round question. What is, in fact, the hardest part of your job?
My particular job is mostly about communication. and communicating storm hazards and getting information to people amidst all the noise that's in the current environment about weather and storms, and trying to make sure that they understand what the real risk is. And I think that's where I focus a lot of my time. I'm not sitting there doing the forecast anymore, but I'm doing this, talking to you, working with our partners, emergency managers, broadcast meteorologists to get the word out.
Cool. Second question, what's the easiest part of your job? Tell me this the off season.
The group of people that I get to work with every day, they make that part of the job for me really, really easy. I've got a great staff to work with.
Biggest misconception of your job? You work more than just June 1st to November 30. Is that fair to say?
Outside the hurricane season is sometimes busier than during the hurricane season.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. Question came in, do you have flood insurance?
I do, yes. And I do not live on the coast or in a flood zone, but I have flood insurance.
Good to know. Are you married? Because I haven't talked. You are married? Is she from North Carolina or is she from Miami? Where is she from?
No, my wife grew up mostly in North Florida, St. Augustine area.
Okay,
so,
we'll forget.
Also a meteorologist. So.
Oh, is she? Okay. Oh, we thought maybe there was a. I was hoping there was an NC State connection in there, but okay.
No, not there.
Love this question. Retired names. Do you get a say? Do you get a vote?
Yes. Each country in the Region 4 Hurricane Committee of the World Meteorological Organization decides which names to retire as a group when we meet every year, and we also decide which names replace them on the list when they get retired. Okay.
Because I know in April it was like Burl, Helene, thank goodness Helene was retired, Milton, and I believe John, those four. Okay. This personal question, do you still own your TI-86 graphing calculator?
No, I don't think so. if I do, the batteries don't work anymore.
The batteries, yeah, okay. I figured that was something we lived on. Do you know all the names of the governors, and are they on speed dial?
Some. We do a lot of more reach out to the emergency managers in the states, but sometimes we talk to elected officials across the country, and sometimes they even show up in training classes. So we try to reach them when we need to.
Oh, good deal. I had some people say that New England, we have our fourth meteorologist, Tony Nargis from Boston. He says we're overdue. Are there areas that you think are overdue for a rude awakening that hurricanes are still alive and well?
Where I am in Southeast Florida, we haven't had a big major hurricane event since Wilma in 2005, Andrew in 92. The storm most people remember. It's been a long time, but yeah, as you go farther north, the occurrence of big storms becomes less frequent, but that risk is still there every year, all the way up into New England.
And is it true? As I come back on camera here. Is it true that the real work starts after the storm? You've said before, I've heard in other encounters online with AMS, that sometimes a chainsaw, power lines down, that type of thing. Describe what that is in your view.
Yeah, we have a lot of people that end up getting hurt or injured or die after hurricanes. And we call these indirect deaths. They're not from drowning or from wind, but they're from accidents and from carbon monoxide poisonings or heat or a lack of medical care. And in the last 10 to 15 years in the United States, we've lost almost as many people in the aftermath of these hurricane events as we have directly due to the storm itself. Mostly major hurricanes, and a lot of the indirect fatalities, as we call them, are related to widespread long duration power outages in many ways.
Very good. Now, the other thing I would be remiss, because I know our time is running out, I wanted to just compliment you. What I remember most about you, whether you remember it, is that you were someone that was laser focused in what they wanted to do. Like NC State, right? You knew, seemed like you if you were to ask the Emily Birds or the Nate Johnsons, the Alan Huffmans or the Jill Derbys that I knew in class, that was something you would want to do, be the director of the National Hurricane Center. Not obviously when you graduated, but it was a goal. And I think in this day and age, a lot of people say, well, I want to start a business, but I can't do it. And we're like incongruent in our thinking. But you seem to be in phase, and I just wanted to compliment you because it only took you 24 years, but you did it. And I didn't know if your advisor was encouraging. Was it Dr. Koch, Watson, Reardon? Which professors made a mark on you in a good way?
I think a lot, and it's not just the professors, but it's the classmates you have, the experiences you have, and really, I think thinking back to NC State, I remember one of the things we emphasized there was that it was just science for science's sake. It was science that was applied and how you learn to help, use it to help people's lives be better. Communicate your silence. I think that was something I really thought a lot about coming out of graduate school, especially. Your science is great, but if you can't communicate why it's important and how it's going to help people to a broader community, I think that really helped inspire me to go into this role where now my job is mostly communication.
Understood. This is my favorite last question to ask you, and then if there's other questions, anyone who wants to leave a question, there's a couple of notes here. Somebody wanted, Amber had another quick question for you. Will storm surge impact inland areas prone to flooding? We have a neighborhood in Norfolk called Ghent, and downtown Norfolk, we could get an inch of rain, and it's big puddles. Yeah. How would you address that?
Yeah, there certainly could be some inundation, 1 to 3 feet above ground level throughout sort of the Hampton Roads area from, sort of the push of those waves and that water coming in from Erin. That flow might sort of clog up the mouth of Chesapeake Bay a little bit, prevent it from draining some. So water is going to be high and going to be an issue, and obviously those flood-prone places will be the ones that are most vulnerable.
Okay, very good. I would be remiss if I didn't read you this question. I wrote this out. Is it fair to say, Dr. Michael Brennan now, is it fair to say, Dr. Brennan, that you have more access, you and your colleagues, have more access, more data, more information on tropical storms or hurricanes than any other time in human history?
Yeah, I think it is fair to say that. And I think, and especially here in the Atlantic Basin, we have more data than anybody else in the world because we're the only country that routinely flies aircraft and can go collect that kind of data we talked about in a storm. We're really the exception rather than the rule, but we're very, very lucky to be able to have that kind of data and those kind of tools.
I was thinking, as I showed you that picture, the dropsondes, the drones, the gliders, the floats, AI. Does AI excite you or scare you? I know there's probably some broadcast forecasters out there going, "Oh, I'm not really excited about AI taking over," or like a deep fake and having the personality become a machine. What's your thought on AI and how it impacts forecasts?
I think it definitely has a lot of potential. We're evaluating some of the AI model guidance here this year. We're pulling in AI guidance from CMWF or Google for track and intensity forecasting, pulling it into our system so we can see how good it does compared to all the other model guidance we use. It's not going to replace the tools we've had and we've come to use over recent years, but it can certainly supplement them and do things that they can't do very well, or maybe run a lot more models and give us a better picture of the uncertainty. It can also help us figure out how to communicate and repackage and compartmentalize information in a better way. And I think that can be really helpful too. Also on the observational side. So it's not just forecasting, but maybe analyzing the storm, looking at all the satellite data. Can we come up with better intensity estimates? How can we sort of boil all this complex information down into ways that are more digestible for
Other question I just realized I had on my piece of paper. When you issue a name, like when we agreed to do this, or you were gracious enough to come on this platform, you're my first guest, by the way. I just usually import comments on the screen. But when you issue a name, like you do, Aaron, I'm assuming you're prohibited from buying flood insurance. So that has a calculus to it. And evacuations, is that a multi-process where protocols have to be filled before nobody willy-nilly issues an evacuation order? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, evacuation orders are issued by mostly local government officials around the country, mayors, county commissioners, governors in some cases. We're not directly involved in making those decisions, but we help support people who are making the decision. Most of the evacuation decisions, like you saw down there in Dare County and Ocracoke, are really made for storm surge. So our storm surge unit here is heavily involved in providing the kind of information to emergency managers to let them make those kinds of decisions. We got a lot better at it. That's one reason why those storm surge fatalities have come down. But we do realize that the forecast, the warnings, and the information we put out obviously have a lot of impacts beyond just the meteorology onto preparedness and other stages.
And issuing similarly a spin-off to that question, tropical storm warnings, hurricane warnings obviously can severely affect businesses. You don't want to cast too big of a net, correct, of what you warn. It has to be, did you want to comment on that maybe briefly?
Yeah, we try to make the warnings, as precise as they can be, but also remembering we try to issue warnings with enough lead time, 36 or 48 hours in advance, so that gives people time to get ready. And every situation is different. Sometimes we have more confidence in the track forecast and less in others, and that can result in the warnings or watches being bigger, or sometimes just the track of the storm. If you have a storm paralleling the coast, kind of like Aaron is, if it was closer, we might have hundreds of miles of coastline under warnings, whereas say you have a storm moving perpendicular to a coast, the warnings can be much smaller because the impacted areas are going to be smaller as well. But the warnings are all about conveying risk. I'm telling people, basically, if you're under some kind of warning, your risk is high enough that you need to take some kind of protective action, depending on what.
This is something I've been dying to ask you. I just realized people make conscious decisions to drive through standing water, and we're always saying, as a weather community, we speak in one voice: turn around, don't drown. And somebody has to come rescue you, right? That's a conscious decision. I'm going to go ahead. People don't always think that somebody has to put their life in danger to rescue you from what could be a sinkhole. Is the same true with evacuations? Because we have some people who say, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to leave for anything. What is your thought?
Yeah, if you're in an area where you've been asked to evacuate by your local officials and you don't leave, you're putting yourself at risk, potentially from the storm itself, potentially putting others at risk who may need to come help you, but you're also putting yourself at risk after the storm. If you're in an area that's been devastated by a hurricane, you may not have power or water or emergency services or air conditioning, and if you have an accident or a medical issue, there may not be anybody to come get you and save you if you have a heart attack or if you fall off your ladder cleaning up from the storm. So the evacuations are really designed to get you out of that storm surge zone, out of an area that could be very, very dangerous to be in, not only during the storm but afterwards. And so we always want people to follow that advice by their local officials. They're the ones that know your community best. They're going to tell you, hey, when you need to leave, and they're also going to tell you when it's safe to come back. And that's also a big issue to think about as well. Don't come back into an area where you've been asked to leave until you're told it's safe to leave. So.
Yeah, there's already discussion that portions of NC-12 that could be easily impassable, and even once the water retreats, it might take a day or two to get it back to "quote unquote" normal. As I'm learning in this area, you are the embodiment, and I want to pay you a compliment as we sign off here. You are the embodiment of what you think about, you bring about. You're somebody in my life that said, "Hey, I have a goal." I remember my advisor at NC State said, "You don't want to do TV, you want to get a master's degree." And I said, "No, I want the math. I just want to do TV." But you're here for a time such as this, and I just wanted to applaud you and give you props and respect. I'm really very excited that you not only represent NC State well in the city of Raleigh, but we're very happy that you spent some time with us here at Hampton Roads in the Outer Banks.
Thanks, David. Great to talk to you and appreciate the invitation.
My pleasure. You're welcome back anytime. So thank you so much. And give my best to Maria. She also helped coordinate this exchange.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll do. Thanks, David.
Have a great night. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. I am still here. Wanted to thank you for your patience with this audio issues, but I got hopefully them ironed out. I'm going to get to the forecast because we were talking about. First, I want to thank my sponsor, Marco's Pizza, is giving away free pizza this week. All you have to do is go to WTKR.com/Marcos if you would like to win some free pizza. It's not hard. There are 5 convenient locations upon which you can redeem that pizza. But if you go to our webpage and the 3 locations in Virginia Beach, 1 in Chesapeake, 1 in Norfolk, those are the places you want to know and how to participate. But let me go back for a moment and back to the weather maps because we do have a deal of the week. I do want to be remiss to mention you get a $5 Pozzola if you're hungry using the promo code WTKR. David, that's our call letters. If you go to marcos.com, you get to participate in that Pozzoli. And also, this is what the certificate looks like. For the pizza for a year. So let me go back to the maps themselves. We are now dealing with a tropical storm watch across Hampton Roads. And the issue why this is important is because many of us think, well, it's out to sea. I don't have any issues with it. It's outside of the cone, but we already have 2 evacuations, Hatteras and Ocracoke at the moment. When you have a tropical storm watch, that means you're going to experience tropical force winds that could be anywhere from 39 to 73. Because remember, 74 is a hurricane. And hurricane force winds may not be all that far off the coast, all things considered. So let's go back and show you Hurricane Erin where she is. If I have time, let me go back real quick. We had a flash flood warning. I'm all discombobulated, but I wanted to show you we have at this time until 9 o'clock a flash flood warning for the city of Newport News, as well as York, as well as James City. And now you're seeing almost 5.5 to 6, 7 inches around I-64. If I'm not mistaken, this is an area, go ahead and clear this off, but it will give you a sense. we clear this off, of where this heavy amount is. And I think it's just in the sight of, was it Fall? Yep, Lee Hall and Falls Reach, I think is where it is. Some of the areas around maybe Lafayette Drive, Halstead Road, Longfellow Road, West Boundary Road. These are the neighborhoods that have been dealing with the heaviest of rain right now, and this also includes Falls Reach. So please be extra careful. Know that we have a flash flood warning until 9 o'clock, even though the heaviest of rains have in fact subsided. If you're on the call, we'd love to say hi to you. What did you think? I got a note from Kim Thompson Jones. She wants to say hello. I'm going to come in here, fly in here for a second. She says, thanks for having him on. I want to thank him. It's no joke. I hadn't talked to him since graduation. Life happens, right? You get a job, you get married, you move on. And he had sights on Miami. He got down into Florida at a very early part of, I'd say around 2007-8, he was a hurricane specialist, and I would commonly see the last name Brennan on these tropical outlooks. Even during my days in Rochester and the 4 years I had in Philadelphia, his name was on there, and I thought, wow, he's doing what he said he would do. But in 2023, he was in fact promoted to the director of the National Hurricane Center. So I was very happy to have him here, and he took the time to do that. It was very cool. All right, so as we mentioned, Newport News, James City, and York, the heavier rains obviously in this part of our viewing area. Heavy rains have still been falling down maybe south of Great Bridge, south of Norfolk, as this is continuing to be a factor. 5 o'clock this afternoon, Tropical Storm Watch came into effect for this area, and Hurricane Aaron, last I checked, had a Category 4 storm. This is no joke. This is something that is getting wider and bigger. It's an unusually large storm. That is something the Hurricane Center has noted. It's been affecting places like Puerto Rico for the longest time, St. Thomas for the longest time, and now the big question is, will we see the effects hurricane-wise? The answer is probably no. You say, wait a minute, I just thought you said we're going to get hit. The hurricane winds are fitting the cone, right? That's the center of the storm. It's the outer bands, because the reach of the tropical storm force winds run out about 230 miles from the center. That's as far as Norfolk is from Roanoke. Roanoke, Norfolk, about 240 miles apart. This is about 230 miles. That's how far these tropical storm force winds are. So they're pretty amazing when you think about it, and that could be challenging for those of you who have to go and do some outdoor activities the next couple of days. Here's the wind forecast. Notice how it just brushes over parts of Hatteras. That comes in on Thursday morning, and by the time we get there, the effects of extensive beach erosion, coastal flooding, dangerous surf, dangerous rip currents, all are going to be in play, because if you zoom in a little bit tighter, you can see how the eastern shore is technically on the cusp. It depends on how far west this storm tracks. And right now, I think we're going to feel the effects of a tropical storm, even though her name may be Hurricane Aaron. We're going to feel the effects of tropical storm force winds of Aaron. You need more proof? Take a look at this. This is 9 o'clock tomorrow night, but then we move into Thursday. What is that? Does that say 61 miles an hour? It does, and there may be maybe lesser amounts, should be much lesser amounts of wind in Virginia Beach, but this is again going to change and fluctuate, and it's because it's at that inflection point, right? This storm is going to continue to move this way, and as it does so, it's going to take us away from the worst of the hurricane force winds. But tropical storm force winds will still be there, and that could take some power out, and it could also affect many other values or other factors. The wind forecast here, a little closer in, compares inland Virginia versus maybe the eastern shore. 47. Look at that. What time is that? That's Thursday morning. So I want to emphasize Thursday itself. I would say between 8 in the morning and about 1 or 2 in the afternoon will probably be the crescendo, because the winds in the Outer Banks might be averaging around 47, but you could have probably close to 50, 60 plus, 65 perhaps, around Hatteras when this is all said and done. There's a 58 right there. That's pretty high. So if we're concerned about the winds, we should be, even though the presumption is, oh, I saw those spaghetti noodle things. They're out in the sea. They're not coming here. No, the center is not, but the effect of the tropical force winds will. How about this for rip current forecast? Did you expect this? Would you say we're going to get hit when you have 8 to 11? 8 to 11, that's what day? That's Thursday. As I said, the worst of it is going to be Thursday. I think it's a 48-hour event. I think it's a 48-hour prolonged event where people will probably say, make it stop. It's too much. and we really got to make sure, and I know that some beaches are closed, probably for good reason. For these reasons alone, I know that the temptation for surfers are going to be like, I got to get out there. Some people are probably not even wanting, as we heard Dr. Michael Brennan from the Hurricane Center about evacuations. It's for your own interest and for your family's safety. When a mandatory evacuation goes out, it's best to heed it and not fight Mother Nature, because sometimes these things can be very, very daunting. If you're on the call, say hi to me. I want to say hi to you. I got Brennan Moore. She's on here. I want to say hi to her. She says, I'm sorry, but if an emergency notification tells me to evacuate, I'm going to evacuate. I'm with you. I'm with you, and I think, Ms. Moore, you probably would say, for those of it that I do know in Isabel, there was a mandatory evacuation. I'm going through some of the old footage. I had a chance to interview Dave Parker. For those of you who are old enough to remember Chief Meteorologist Dave Parker at WTKR, because we're in our 75th year, he indicated that they were advising you to use a permanent marker and put your Social Security and name on your arm so we can identify you. How grim is that? Isabel, people lost power for 10 days. At least Dave Parker told me that. So yeah, it's so much more advisable. We have so much more information. We have more information at our fingertips than any time in human history. You could have all the details, but if you don't behave differently, if your behavior still puts you out in harm's way, what good is it to have the information? It has no value if it doesn't at least change your behavior to some degree. We want to keep you safe. That's the message. Okay, forecast wave heights. Look out here, about 20. Anywhere from 15 to 20. As the further out you go, this will take you through Thursday. Again, we're focused on Thursday as the worst day, and somewhat improving, but cautiously improving on Friday. Coastal flood watch in effect for the counties that you see here. I believe we now have what I showed last week, what coastal flooding could look like. It could look like this in terms of water, or depending if it moves a little closer in, it could be like this. And people say, oh, nobody told me it was going to be this bad. I'm here to tell you, I don't want you to think, I don't want you to be surprised. So weather doesn't surprise you. You come to WTKR and the First Warning Weather Team. That's why we're here. We're on morning, noon, and night. We're on television. We're on WTKR.com. We want you to be safe. It's very important that you take these precautions. Now, this is something that came out, the new high surf advisory. When's this go into effect? This is from noon Tuesday to 12 midnight Saturday for 15 to 20 plus large breaking waves in the surf zone. That says it all. I know I don't need to be on the beach. You probably don't want to be on the beach, and you don't want your kids, old or young, to be on the beach when there's 15 to 20 foot waves. Surfers will love it. But, let's be safe, let's be realistic, let's keep each other accountable. Hurricane Aaron, latest cone. Now, this can be, and sometimes at this stage of the game, this can be misleading, because you're like, oh, it's out here. But because this thing's so far and wide, it's got winds, it's got hurricane winds that are 80 miles from the center. It's got tropical storm force winds that are 230 miles out from the center. And that's why right now Aaron is just showing off. This thing's big, it's an animal, and you got to take it with a grain of salt. When you got winds of 165 around the eye wall, that's intense. That's intense, and this is the latest update as of 8 o'clock. You can see that at the top of the screen. So what's winning the day? Well, it could be this model. The operational European model brings it a lot closer to Hatteras than the others did. You remember those spaghetti plots? Most of it took it further to the west. Over here is Bermuda. Now, this could bring it in within 150 to 100 miles of Hatteras, which would be shocking, because people, I didn't know it was going to be that bad. I didn't know it was going to be that bad. Well, that's why you come here. We try and give you the possibilities are there. And this is maybe tomorrow's the calm before the storms, because we got Wednesday, it builds. It's like listening to a song that builds to a crescendo. It's going to build up on Thursday and slowly retreat on Friday. So we got Thursday's a big day, Friday's a pullback day. But it may take, as Will Thomas, our neighborhood news reporter out in the Outer Banks, said, it might take a couple of days to restore some of the impassable roads like NC-12 down in the Outer Banks. So this is Aaron about 10 a.m. Thursday. This would be a prime time to where you might want to be hunkered down if you're in the Outer Banks, and know that it's not going to get better much until probably 1 o'clock on Friday. So it's a long process. One of those things you got to watch all the same. I got a note from Alex White. I do know Alex. He wants to say, hey, aptly timed for the surfing championship. Is that this weekend, Alex? I learn all sorts of things from you all, because that helps me maybe just like it was aptly timed that I had the Hurricane Center on the 18th of August. That's kind of cool too. But thank you, Alex, for letting me know. Is that being done here, or is it being done somewhere else? You could always go to the Atlantic Park Surf. They just opened that this past weekend. So if you like to surf and you want it more controlled like me, that's more maybe my speed. I'd have to learn how to get on a board first. I could do a boogie board, I suppose. Hey, by the way, 60% chance we get another storm. This could be Ferdinand. Where'd you get that? Ferdinand, it's the F storm, F-E-R. I think it's R-A-N-N-D, if I had that right. Ferdinand. But see, Ferdinand, potentially, will probably be moving into the wash water that, the path, moving in the direction of the path of Aaron. So there's probably not going to be the warmth of the water, and I think it probably will fizzle. A lot of the models down the road do not bring that storm quite to the same magnitude or even organization that we have with Aaron. So we have Aaron. It was a Cat 5 on Saturday. Ferdinand would be the next named storm, and it's now 8:31. I got to finish up here in a few moments, but I wanted you to have all the nuts and bolts, including my 7-day forecast. Atlantic storm timeline, we're just getting started. September 10th is the peak. That's usually historically when we get most of our activity in all things tropical, and it is last checked only the 18th of August. Flash flood warning until 10:30 now. My goodness. That was in effect until 7. Then they kicked the can to 9 o'clock. Now they kicked the can down to 10:30. You really have to be extra careful if you're in that area of Hampton or perhaps Newport News, because the flooding has been torrential. Meanwhile, we have a front that's moved across Virginia down into North Carolina, and clearly the rainfall amounts have varied. Anywhere from a ½ inch Smithfield to 1.25 inches for Elizabeth City, almost 2 inches, and I think that's just one gauge. We've seen estimates of 2.5 to 5, 6, maybe closing in on 7. A lot of rain. Suffolk's picked up 2.4 today. A lot of rain for our neighbors, and it's really important that you drive around it and not through it. Today's high hit 85 in Norfolk. Record high is 96 from 2017, and we've now had 3 days above normal. We actually hit 90 yesterday, and we hit it on Thursday. So we've had 2 90-degree days in all of August. Not a whole lot when we average typically 9 days. This comes by way of the National Weather Service in Wakefield. We can round up here. We had 12 in July, we had 12 in June, and we had 12 in, we had 2 in May and 1 in April. So last I checked, we have 29. 29 days, almost a month's worth, and typically we get about 36. It's going to be hard pressed. When you look at the 7-day, I do not have any more 90s this week. So we're going to be hard pressed to get back there. And when you have the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center highlighting how cool it is, I mean, does this look cool? How are you going to hit 90 from the 25th to the 31st? Some of you will say, we're probably not. Probably not going to get back to 90, especially as we round out the last few days of the month. This has been a topsy-turvy, upsy-daisy, downsy-daisy type of, compared to July. July was just humid. It was on fire, and so was June. Both June and July had 12 90-degree days. Here we've had only 2. All right, the Virginia Beach oceanfront, it's 8:33. I got to wrap things up. Here are the current temperatures. We're about 10 degrees cooler in Williamsburg right now as compared to where we were this time last night. Many of us are in the 70s, if not the upper 70s here at 8 o'clock. Temperature change is about 2, -2 Windsor, -5 in Jackson, so a little bit cooler. But my headlines are this: coastal flooding, dangerous surf, cooler this week with highs in the low to mid 80s, and the best storm chances are Thursday when Aaron slides by. So when Aaron slides by, and she will, she's going to have her greatest impact, I think, on Thursday. We look at this because I know we have a lot of those who are in the military. If you're curious where what's going on back home, if you're homesick, got a lot of severe weather breaking out in northern Illinois. They've got some flash flood warnings in green. They've got severe thunderstorm warnings in orange, and I think that's where we'll focus in on this particular spot. This is Cook County. Looks like LaSalle, flash flood warning till 10:15. So if you have family in northern Illinois, it's not all that great. There's some also severe weather in the Dakotas up to the north and further south into parts of Kansas where they're used to probably tornadoes. But they have a severe thunderstorm warning in Thomas County until 8:15. But I don't want to forget, I don't want to leave out our friends over here in in the Hampton Roads area, because we were still looking at that flash flood warning. It seems like it's the only severe warning we have right now. It's the flooding. The flooding is going on in Hampton and Newport News now until 10:30, so please be extra careful. Lows today, 75. Very, very sticky this morning. That was at 4:55 this morning. We got up to 85 at 3:18 this afternoon. So Norfolk coming in just about 2 degrees below average today. Here's the temperature trend, 83, 84, 81. 80 on Friday and 83 on Saturday. You can see that we're a far cry from normal at this stage when the normal high is 87 degrees this time of year. All right, so keeping this in perspective, let me show you the dew point temperatures, because we know it's sticky. It's going to remain pretty sticky until the last of Erin moves away. As Erin slides away to the northeast, we will see a big sharp decrease in our dew points, which will make it more pleasant. Maybe still humid, but 65 is a lot easier to take than 74 or 72. So if you're sensitive to humidity, it will get better. I think our best chance of rain, again, because they're coming in bands, it's not going to be an equal opportunity rain. You have a better chance if you're in the Outer Banks or perhaps right along Virginia Beach. Here's your Eastern Shore forecast: 80 in Onancock, about 76 for Chincoteague, and 78 for Bloxham. Mentioned the tropical storm warnings: 81 in Cape Charles, 81 in Exmoor. Further south, the Outer Banks has some evacuations going on in Hatteras as well as Ocracoke. But as far as Duck, high about 80, 83 for Manio, 82 in Nags Head, and Rodanthe and Ocracoke Hatteras about 85, 84. Storm Prediction Center highlighting the fact that we're going to be generally in the scattered to isolated category of the next day or two until tonight anyway. The hot spots for severe weather are in fact in South Dakota and Nebraska, just to name a few. Denver, Colorado could have some isolated severe storms before tonight is through. Heading further east around Chicago, there could also be some scattered severe storms in this part of the country, extending down into northern sections of Little Rock. As far as Hampton Roads, nothing to expect at this juncture. Tuesday, tomorrow, there could be some isolated severe storms in Oklahoma City, back toward Louisville, and back toward areas in Ohio. Back home, though, Tuesday looks fine, although we have the risk for storms, about a 30% chance. Wednesdays, it's really focused in North Dakota, up toward Williston and Minot, but nothing really to see at the Great Lakes, and really nothing to see here. So let me show you the future cast. One of the things I like to do with these types of events is just show you, even in the short term, 11 o'clock tonight, it still puts that rain around Williamsburg. So that could be a factor on why the Weather Service decided to extend this thing till 10:30. There could still be some more rain to come into your neck of the woods. 7 a.m. tomorrow looks dry here, but maybe a few showers west. Go into midday, it starts to drop back down from areas from the north, from Matthews County, Middlesex, back toward maybe Isle of Wight, back toward Franklin and Southampton at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. When it take this full. So by the time we get to 11 o'clock tomorrow, you're like waiting for, I heard the winds are going to pick up, and they should. Not all these models are geared for tropical winds, and they may be a lot stronger than what one might suggest. So Tuesday morning, few showers mainly west for the peninsulas, south side North Carolina. Tonight's lows, you can see about 75 Norfolk, 73 Chesapeake, and 71 for our friends in Gatesville. Tomorrow, about a 30% chance of storms, 83 for south side, 85 for North Carolina, and Tuesday's high about 84 in Portsmouth, 80 in Duck, 85 in Edenton, looking for a high in Smithfield at 82 degrees. All right, want to recap our forecast. That's the high for tomorrow. Let's go ahead and show you what I expect in terms of your first warning, WTKR News 3 7-day forecast, and hopefully that'll show up on the screen. There it is. And with the big waves behind it, 83 tomorrow, 84 on Wednesday, should be around 81 on Thursday. That's the day where the chance of rain could easily go up. We put Erin as a hurricane here, even though her effects will be tropical storm-like here, but it's very important to know that that's the day that we will be feeling the worst of the effects. And it's no picnic on Friday. It might be better Friday afternoon than Friday morning, but the timing of this will drop the dew points down. Lows will be dropped with the upper 60s, so it'll feel more comfortable before we bring a few more storms and showers, possibly Sunday and into Monday. Now, if you like to end on a happy note, let me show you Hampton. We'll go to Buckrow Beach. sunrise last Friday from William Wood. Thank you for sharing that beautiful picture with us, William. Justin Fuller shares this first landing sunset, beautiful sunrise, or sunset rather, and the one from Katrina on James River sunset. Love seeing this as well. Very appreciative of these great pictures that you take in our WTKR photographers group. It's very, very appreciative. I'm appreciative of these great photographs. By the way, if you haven't checked out and want to figure out how can I get a free certificate for pizza for a year, go to WTKR.com/Marcos. Marcos is going to be giving away free pizza this Thursday. We did it last Thursday, and if you already registered once, you don't have to register again. We also have a great deal of the week. It's my favorite. It's the $5 Pozzoli. If you're ever in a pinch and you want to go through a drive-through, I say don't. Go to Marcos.com. You might love the pepperoni and sausage. That's my personal favorite. And make sure you add the marinara or ranch dressing that goes right with these. It's like a calzone or a stromboli. But all you have to do is use the promo code WTKR David, and you'll find that it's also a great adjunct to a quick lunch if you want it. And in order to redeem that, you would have to go to these 5 stores. You can find Marcos in all kinds of places in Hampton Roads and around the country, but Marcos.com, these are the participating contest locations, so very thankful for our friends at Marcos. All right, so kind of covered all the goodies there. We talked about the favorite item that I have. I just want to remind you what a treat this was for me, because this was kind of an experiment outside of the audio issues initially. Once I got through that, I still felt that the content was there, and the fact that we have a better understanding of how important it is to take care of each other. That's what I take away from it. It's great to see a friend that I knew many years ago move up on as what you think about, you bring about. That's what I take away from my relationship with Mike. He was just somebody who was focused. And like I said, if you want to be the first person to walk on Mars, you want to be the first person in your family to start a business. Sometimes we say, I can't, and that's what I like to. It's incongruent. You just got to be in phase, point your feet in the right direction, and you can do it. And if you know someone who wants to have a goal, be sure to encourage them. That's my view. Anyway, well, it doesn't matter if the weather is sunny or serious. Doesn't matter if a hurricane seemingly is coming nearby. Just remember that every day is a gift. Make the most of it in your neighborhood. We'll see you here tomorrow. Take care.